The last few weeks have been filled with news in the classic WoW scene. We got many different small news that none deserved a video on their own, but I figured I'd pack them all up in a news roundup video for you guys. If you were paying attention during the last few weeks, you will know all about this. But there will probably be a few things that you missed, so that's the goal of this video. By the way, as far as I know, no one else on YouTube does these type of news videos for classic WoW. We have people like Bellular with his news roundup and Hazel Nutty with her Almost Saturday series for the retail game, but no one does this for classic specifically. So I figured I'd make this into a series and make a video when we have big news coming or many different small news like we had in the last few weeks. So for that reason, make sure to subscribe to not miss this. I will be doing this more in the future. With that said, let's jump into the news. So let's start with the most recent news. A few days ago, we had a massive ban wave happening in Classic WoW, affecting entire guilds or raid groups and even individual players. You can clearly see when a massive ban wave like this happens, because on the Classic WoW subreddit, you get tens of posts about players getting banned overnight. The only official word from Blizzard about this is a blue post from 3 days ago on the official forums, where the GM states that usually when large groups of guild members are all penalized around the same time, it is usually because they have been found to have exploited the game terrain, such as going through walls, going underground, etc. When this blue post surfaced, many guilds pointed out the possibility that this could be due to players being summoned on top of the gates of Ahn'Qiraj. Guilds usually do this on PvP servers to avoid getting killed and losing their world buffs before raids. And many players suspect this to be the cause of the ban wave, but nothing is confirmed, of course. Naturally, if you have been caught in this ban wave, make sure to submit a ban appeal. Many players report getting unbanned after getting hit, so make sure to do it too if you have been banned recently for this reason. On a similar note, Blizzard is now tracking down on multi-boxing software. This came as a big surprise for everyone because since its inception 16 years ago until very recently, Blizzard never banned anyone in World of Warcraft for using multiboxing software, but a week ago they released a blog post stating that they will be moving away from this in the future and that if you're currently using one of those programs, you should immediately stop or risk being banned. If you don't know, multiboxing softwares are programs that allow players with many accounts and/or subscriptions to the game to control essentially an infinite amount of characters simultaneously, for as much as their pockets or computers allow. We've seen armies of hundreds of multi-boxed characters in the past, which is nuts. And in Classic, there were many players using multiboxing to gank entire raids at entrances of raids. The most popular of those players is probably Jerome, who is a streamer on Twitch and a rather interesting fella, to put it that way. But Jerome streamed himself controlling 40 characters at once and using gobbling sapper charges on other guilds and wiping them all at once with the press of a button, which is kinda crazy to see. But anyways, from now on, all of that will be impossible to do. To be completely clear, multiboxing is not banned. It is only the fact of using third-party programs to run these type of large-scale multiboxes that is not allowed anymore. You might still be able to control 2 or 3 characters if you're really good at it, but anything more than that and you would need one of those programs to do it, and that's what Blizzard wants to move out from. Now let's talk about changes to Classic. And oh boy, did we get a lot recently. Let's start with the change affecting hunters. I talked about this a month ago, but basically, as Blizzard announced their plan for Phase 6, they also released some patch notes for patch 1.13.6. And with that came a very pleasantly surprising change for hunters. From now on, hunters would essentially gain way more attack power with Blizzard changing how AP works, to also give AP to ranged attacks, for many buffs. This affects every world buff that gives attack power, and also things like Juju Might. Basically, if the buff doesn't specify if it's melee or ranged attack power, it will now affect both, when in the past it only affected melee attack power for some reason. Blizzard recognized this as an unintended consequence of their old code, and they decided to fix it. Hunters are obviously stoked about this news, me included, because we finally have a reason to grab world buffs now, and it's a free buff for every hunter, so we'll take it. Another change that is going to take effect in Phase 6 is that weapons like Nightfall, Sulphurous, Hammer of the Northern Wind, and many more of those type of chance effect weapons will now correctly be triggered while the GCD is on cooldown. Basically, how it worked in the past is that if you did any sort of attack that triggered your GCD, for the whole duration of the GCD, those weapons would not trigger their effect. And many players were frustrated by this. It meant, for example, that warriors who used Hammer of the Northern Wind on Viscidus had to only use auto attacks, or their hammer would never trigger its effect. Blizzard recognized this as something that wasn't intended, and rather a limitation of all technology. So they decided to fix it for Phase 6. And on the same vein of changes that Blizzard recognized as being things that weren't intended but basically due to limitations, we have the Saphhiron Aura. Blizzard released a long post about this that I'm not going to read entirely. If you want to read it, you can either pause the video here or find a link to it in the description. But basically, Blizzard decided to change the Sapphiron Frost Aura from 1 second to 2 seconds. Essentially, making the fight way easier and requiring way less frost resistance gear. How it worked in the past in 2006 is because of the way the servers handled dots, players would most of the time receive a dot every 2 seconds and occasionally every 1 second. And Blizzard never meant for this to be the case. The classic WoW developers asked the original devs of Vanilla, and they told them that they intended for the aura to be 2 seconds every time, and never 1 second. So that's the reason for this change. Back in the day, the aura did damage every 2 seconds, and occasionally again 1 second later. But in classic WoW, it will always be 2 seconds from now on. And finally, let's talk about some PvP changes. First, let's talk about something that was about to be put in the game, but that Blizzard decided to abandon. A few weeks ago, Blizzard published this blue post. You can see where the text is crossed that they intended to make it so that any deleted characters would no longer be taken into consideration for the counting of the total PvP pool participation. As soon as this blue post was posted, players quickly took to the forums, stating that this would be a big detriment for any casual player that wants to rank, and this would help botters and players using illegitimate means to rank up. Blizzard recognized that, and they decided not to implement this change after all, but that they are still working on a solution to this issue, so we should expect a change to this in the future maybe. And then to stay on the subject of PvP, to end this video, let's talk about the change coming to Warsong Gulch in Phase 6. This is nothing too big, but they decided to fix some terrain exploits in Warsong Gulch and make it so that players would no longer be able to climb walls to get to unreachable places and hold flags for hours while their teammates are farming honor on the other faction. Blizzard obviously is against this type of behavior, and any changes you see to the terrain of Battlegrounds is to fight this. It's worth noting that this and any other terrain exploits in Battlegrounds were present since vanilla. They have been fixed throughout the years in retail, but Blizzard is essentially re-implementing those fixes to Classic now. Those things were possible back in the day, but they were very rare, since no one had any easy ways to transfer information on a large scale back in 2005. But nowadays, everyone knows about everything as soon as it gets discovered, and it gets exploited by thousands of players at once, and that's why Blizzard deems it necessary to fix those things in Classic now. So, conclusion to all of this. Blizzard is clearly changing the game. Is it surprising? Not really. The No Changes crowd have been shouting this #NoChanges slogan since even before the game launched. And to be fair, Blizzard was all in for this idea. All they had to do is publish the game in its current state and never touch it again. But as players started experiencing the game, both Blizzard and the players quickly realized that if the game was left untouched, it would quickly die, due to all the bugs and the annoyances it has. So Blizzard had to step up to fix some of those small things that would still keep the game intact, but help with those pesky bugs and unintended occurrences that make the game worse. And of course, this means that in the future, if Blizzard re-releases Classic Vanilla, all those changes would be in the game from Phase 1. None of those changes really affect TBC in any way, but they will affect a potential re-release of Classic Vanilla, so that's something to keep in mind. But I will ask you guys, do you like these changes? Do you think it's necessary for Blizzard to change the game like this? Or do you think they should just leave it untouched and unchanged? Also, give me your feedback in the comments on this series. I will probably be doing more of these videos in the future, covering everything. So let me know if you liked it and if something needs to be changed. With that said, whatever you do, remember to have fun, take care of yourselves and your loved ones. Bye for now.